Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Steph.
Hello, I'm Georgiana.
Right on. So, before we get started today, and what did we decide we were talking about today?
Accepting love in the ways that people are able to give it.
Ah, yes. That irritating phrase, love is all around you. Doesn't irritate me anymore, but it sure used to. Okay, so before we get started, we're going to do a body-based practice. As always, this is to get us in tune with ourselves before we offer ourselves to other people or to the space we've entered or to this podcast.
Yeah, so today we'll do one that requires us to use our hands, but I always like to start with anchoring with some body part first. So for me, it's either my feet or my butt. So maybe take a moment to feel either of those or maybe both. And notice your breath. And we'll take one hand and place it somewhere on your back. Like you don't have to crank your arms so that you're hurting yourself, but just somewhere where you can feel your back. And with the next breath, see if you can notice your hand on your back and your breath. And then we'll place the other hand on somewhere on the front of your body. And again, just notice the inhale and exhale of your breath. I like whenever I do this, I start feeling like I'm a little sandwich. So I have the back and the front, and there's an in between, right? So there's a space in between. That's where feelings are, energy is, all the organs and muscles and all that delicious stuff lies. But everything happens in this in between space. Well, not everything, but a lot happens in this in between space. And I like to think of it as like holding, I've got my back, I've got my heart, and I'm holding everything that's in between with love and care. And when you're
That's
ready,
nice.
just release your hands. That was really sweet watching you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because at the end, I noticed just a very sweet, content look on your face. It's a very childlike look. Like, oh, this feels good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
loving
like
Steffi
that
sandwich.
selfie sandwich. Is that what you said?
Yeah, Steffi
A
sandwich.
Steffi sandwich. I like that we can create that experience for ourselves in a short amount of time. Like, I've got my back, got my heart. I'm here for myself, here to hold everything that happens in me today with love and care.
Yeah. Felt significant for me that somehow the phrase, there's something in between,
Mm.
you know? It takes me out. I have really black and white thinking if I'm not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and having that liminal space feels good.
Yeah. The in between space.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in a way, we get to talk about the in between space today, in between us and other people.
Yeah, this feels thematic. All of the ways that you could hold yourself. You know, what degrees of love are you offering yourself when you have your hand on your back and in your front and you're feeling the in between space?
Yeah.
There's a lot of space in between how we feel love ought to arrive and how we might experience love arriving.
Yeah, I had a lot of ideas of how other people should love me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a lot of big feelings about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I don't ever
I've had a.
feel you
Oh, go
go.
ahead.
I think growing up, I thought I was loved all wrong.
Mm.
I wanted to be loved in such different ways than what I was receiving. But as a kid, I don't think I could really articulate that. Something just didn't feel good with my parents.
Mm.
And there were some things that I knew that were missing, but it just sort of felt off.
Hmm.
Even though they loved me very, very much, and they still do, and I loved them, it felt like we never found that. It didn't quite click.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Can you
And
say
as I
more
got,
about that?
yeah, looking back at my childhood, my parents worked so hard for us. My parents are immigrants. They came from Hong Kong to Vancouver in the 70s, and I was born shortly after that. They worked super hard, like multiple jobs if they had to, like the lowest level entry jobs that they could get because English was a second language for them. And I think my parents' way of showing love is to make sure that we lived in a safe and nice home, that our home was in a decent neighborhood, and that we could go to good schools. And to them, that was how they could love us well and provide for us.
Hmm.
And here I am, this little like Asian girl going to school with all white kids in predominantly white neighborhoods. And I would overhear parents say to the kids, I love you. I'm like, what's that? Why don't my
Hmm.
parents say that to me? Or teachers giving us, like myself included, and other kids like praise and encouragement. I was like, huh, my parents don't talk to me like that. In fact, they say really mean things.
Hmm.
And I couldn't make sense of it. And I think I always longed for the I love yous. You're doing a great job. How can I help you? Um, that's so exciting. Tell me more. And hugs. And I'm pretty sure I got hugs and snuggles when I was really little. I think that's just innate for parents to try to offer that. But as I grew older, I definitely noticed a difference between my friends and their parents and what it was like with my parents. We weren't a
Hmm.
hugging family. We weren't an I love you kind of family.
Hmm. Yeah, I identify with that a lot. I introduced hugs into my family. I feel that I introduced hugs. Maybe they have a different
I think you
story.
can take the claim for that.
Yeah. And I remember hugging my grandma. I remember deciding, I remember realizing at some point that she wasn't going to be around forever. And so I hugged her and kissed her a bunch. And it was rigidly welcome, you know?
Rigidly welcome. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. And there is that rigidness, when people aren't used to loving touch, you might get a rigid response. It doesn't mean they don't want it real bad.
I think that's such a key is some people have deemed themselves to hate hugs and hate touch. And I feel sad hearing that because
Yeah.
my sense is there is some kind of touch that would feel nourishing and warm and tender that they would enjoy, but maybe they haven't gotten a chance to discover what that is yet.
Yeah.
And
To
they
do all
walk.
the work needed internally to manage the discomfort and the anxiety and the fear that comes up when love is offered if you haven't experienced that in touch form.
Mhm.
Or making it sexual, or all the stories we come up with about why people might want to touch us or not.
Mhm. And I'm all about honoring what people are comfortable with. I don't want to be we my kids used to love this book called The Hug Machine, and it was just that you just go around and hug all sorts of things, and also yeah, it was very cute. But my point being, I don't want to go offering hugs to people who don't want that. What I would love for people is that they're open to the idea that maybe there is some kind of touch that would be welcoming and enjoyable and nourishing for them to receive, and maybe they haven't discovered yet. It reminds me of a friend that I have who we laugh about it. We all know she doesn't want to be touched, she doesn't want to be hugged. And I'm such a hugger. And sometimes like I'll be around her and I'll say, I just want you to know that if you were a hugger, I would be squishing you right now because I love you so much, or I'm so excited for you. And we've
Hmm.
just made that agreement that that's how I will show her how much she's loved, and, without crossing those boundaries that she doesn't want to be touched.
That's really sweet. Yeah.
So I make a point to, because I feel it in my body, those moments I want to extend and I want to offer a hug or I want to offer like some sort of love and that's physical.
Yeah.
And I'll remember she doesn't want it. She
She
doesn't
doesn't
like
want
it. And I make that's okay. But I don't want to miss out on her knowing
it.
that
Yeah.
in that moment, I wanted her to know I feel these things for you and I want you to know how much I love you and care about you. So
Yeah.
I
It's
tell her.
sharing energy, right?
Mhm.
That's great. This is making me think of my housemate has a big Great Dane, Sterling, who has a lot of nervous behaviors and big feelings. He's a big love muffin. And so when he gets excited, so when we come home or when we emerge from a room or whatever it is, he grabs his toy and just like runs around with his toy, showing us his toy. And this is a displacement behavior for when animals are having really big feelings, they displace it onto this toy
Mm.
demonstration. And that's just the sweetest thing. These are the energies that we have often for people. Maybe we want to squish them or hug them, or I think the center of the brain that is in charge of things being overwhelmingly cute is also like the murder center. So we
Oh,
get confusing brain bits happening. And that's why when you see something cute, you want to maybe squish it and kill it.
yes.
Yeah.
I have
These
that
are,
a lot.
yeah.
And I don't know, like, I wonder if someone can let us know, like, is this like, what is this? Because I have sat in the stands of the hockey arena watching my son play hockey. And like, even though he's so skilled, like way more skilled at skating than I probably ever will be, he's only 12, but I get so much joy watching him and his friends and his teammates. And to me, they're still little. And I look at them and I just say, I just want to squish you.
Yeah.
Right? That's the love that I feel inside. And I remember one day sitting next to one of the hockey dads. And just out of curiosity, I thought I would ask, like, do you ever look at your child and you just want to squish him? Like, you just love him so much, you just want to squish him? And he looked at me. He's like, no. He's like, I think that's a mom thing.
Oh,
Oh,
is it?
okay. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a mom thing, a woman thing,
Mm,
but I definitely have many times, where I feel so much love for someone that,
yeah.
yeah, I want to squish you.
Yeah, or that I'm going to like freak out or I need to scream or run around the block or something. Yeah. And so, how does that love come out? Sometimes it'll be hugging squishes. I can imagine sometimes it might be kind of weird too. Like, I'm the sort of person who like tries to solve people's problems unsolicited, or um, I might offer weird uncomfortable sentences instead of direct love.
Oh,
I've been a sort of a hardened person, so my offerings of love have not been soft until pretty recently. um,
what would that have looked like or sounded like in the past? You offering love.
it could be snarky comments, sarcastic, like, or just like, I love you so much I'm going to beat you to death, which is not a serious threat, but it's also not just a simple soft message. It's
Right.
there's that force behind it, that incredible feeling in my solar plexus of wanting to just squish you to death, right? Yeah, it's hard to articulate, so I articulate it through my filters and my programming, and or even just shut down. Sometimes just
Mm.
forget it. Those are big energies. I'm just going to go home, have a
Just
sleep.
forget it. I'm gonna go home. I love you so much. It's all too big to feel, so just forget it. I'm gonna go home.
Yeah.
And we laugh, but I think that love can feel so overwhelming and scary to people that they do that. Maybe not always consciously, sometimes consciously, but sometimes that's the programming of it's not safe
Yeah.
to show people how much I really love and care for them.
Yeah.
And I remember being in relationship where I felt so much love for this person and I felt it like just oozing and I wanted to be able to express it, but I just knew based on conversations and just reading body language that I'm like, this person has such a wall up to receiving it.
Mm.
And like, I would feel like, oh, I have to hold back. because there's no receptivity to that love landing. And
What do you think that's about,
it
the
was
no
sad
receptivity?
feeling, the no receptivity.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really vulnerable to receive love and feel that someone loves us this much. And can I handle that? Will I disappoint them? If I take this love in, um, can I hold it? Am I going to mess it up? You know, I haven't maybe per se felt those things, but I've been connected with people who have thought those things and had those fears. And so I have felt that like this love that I want to express has nowhere to land.
Mm.
And that's a sad feeling for me.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to someone I was once with, I said, I get this sense, and it's just an intuitive and an energy feeling. It wasn't this arrogant place of thinking, but I said, I get this sense that you love me more than you're willing to admit to yourself and
Ugh,
more than you're willing to show me.
that makes me want to scream.
And he said, yeah, you're right. And it just felt really sad. I feel really sad
Yeah.
thinking about that right now because
Yeah.
I want us to all be in this place where we feel free and confident and trusting in feeling love for people and expressing it to people and allowing it to land on us when people want to shower us in it.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense of what the fears were for him that were blocking that love?
Um, Fears of, if this doesn't work out, I'll be destroyed.
Ugh.
Yeah. And I can understand that from just a human fear. It's not one that, it's not a fear that leads me and guides me, but I can understand it.
Hmm.
I have a
Yeah.
different fear. My fear is that I never like to leave things unsaid. Like sometimes I think about people who I love dying, and I'm like, I don't want you to not know how much I love you and care about you and how much our time together, no matter how short or how long, has been significant to me. I want you to know how you've impacted me and my life. And so I I I try to do my best to share that with people because my fear is that they might not know it or they might not remember it. So it's a
Right.
different fear.
And then, ironically, if they can't let love in, they won't be able to hear what you're saying, or they'll hear it through like strange cotton balls filled with self loathing that skew the message in some painful way. Oh boy, human interaction can be challenging. It makes me want to squish people and scream at the same time.
Mm-hmm. What excites me though and makes me feel hopeful is I see how people who are willing and intentional about changing those patterns and beliefs about love and whether it's safe to feel love and extend and offer love, I see how it changes people's lives. Yeah. So that part
Yeah.
makes my heart feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't always have to stay that way.
No. I feel like I occupy a completely different planet or universe than I used to occupy. You can hear in people's voices and in the words they choose how much love they're willing to accept or how much love they believe exists in the world and where that might come from. You know, the difference between if you give somebody a compliment and they
Mhm.
just are able to receive it with a thank you, versus some kind of funny deflections.
That
Like,
was really hard for me. I had to learn that.
mm,
Actually intentionally practice saying thank you to someone's compliment and not minimizing it and not offering immediately another compliment back. And so it was an actual practice of noticing when people were saying kind things to me, appreciative things to me, and just pausing and saying thank you. And in the beginning, it was very robotic because I just knew I needed to grow this pattern of pausing and letting it land versus that quick autopilot, minimize and offer something nice back.
Mm-hmm.
Until over time, I actually began really enjoying soaking it in
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying like feeling that energy come from someone,
Mm-hmm.
right? That they took the time and they moved past any fears that they might have had to extend some gratitude and appreciation towards me. That's really
Mm-hmm.
sweet and thoughtful.
Yeah. Such a different feeling. I remember the feeling of sort of an anxious scramble if somebody complimented me. Like even this morning at the pool, a woman told me she liked my bathing suit. And I went into the autopilot. I was like, well, thank you, but here are the problems with the bathing suit. Um, and I could have just had a moment of delight there,
Mm-hmm.
but autopilot was not going there. I think
Yeah.
that's a really simple and good practice for people to just receive and to not explain themselves or justify
Mm-hmm.
anything or allow their anxious social programming to take over in that moment.
Something you just said really made me smile, which is I could have delighted in that, a moment of delight. I feel like we rob ourselves of moments of delight all the time. So, this pausing, like right now, I can feel like I'm squishing my feet into the ground, my toes, because it just helps me be here. And it's that practice that has helped me be able to experience moments of delight because in the past, so many moments of delight were happening that I had no clue were happening, or they
Yeah,
were like just so fleeting that I didn't actually get to enjoy them.
yeah,
So, yeah.
that sounds familiar. Yeah. And, imagine yourself when you're giving someone a compliment. It's also delightful to give people compliments, I'm certainly not giving somebody a compliment and expecting to be told, like, oh, what a beautiful dress. Thank you. It has pockets. It was on sale. Like, it's a nice little moment of
That's such
connection.
a common response.
Yeah, it has pockets. It was on sale. Those are the things. It's like, great. I just wanted you to know I liked your dress. But
Mhm.
how uncomfortable is it for us in this current way we do things in society to just share a quiet moment of delight with a stranger or a friend
Mhm.
or whoever? We're too busy,
Yeah.
Got to
Yeah.
slow that down and enjoy the delight.
Those are my favorite moments of delight, especially with strangers, because those ones are so unexpected.
Mm,
And I like looking for and creating those moments of delight randomly throughout the day.
hmm
Like, who doesn't feel happier experiencing a moment of delight?
I do that too. And I've got to say, in my marriage, which was not the happiest, most delightful time in my life, one of my great joys was talking to strangers who were not my partner. and some of the most delightful interactions I experienced were with strangers. And I think so. Two streams there. I do delight and can delight in that, and I can also use it as a way of having connection outside of deep relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It gets harder to have delight as our patterns come up in deeper, closer relationships. It's easier to have that surfacey delight feeling with strangers for me. So
Yeah.
I want to enjoy it and notice if I'm avoiding deeper connection for fear of losing delight.
That one is so big, right? We get our delight bucket filled with these little spurts with randoms.
Yeah.
And we might be missing out and or blocking so much delight that could happen in these relationships that require more depth, more, you see each other's yucky bits more often. And can you
Yeah.
still find delight? in each other and in the connection.
Yeah. That's so hard. And pushing past our own yucky bits to get to connection. Man. Are
Yeah.
there any ways in your life that you're aware you offer love that can't be received the way you're offering it? Or do you alter the way you give love?
This is so funny that you asked that question. No, I have made an internal agreement with myself that I am no longer willing to participate in relationships where the way I want to be able to give freely isn't welcomed and accepted with delight.
Mm,
Because I tried really hard to bend myself to like not be too much in my expression of love. And I don't want to be that way,
yeah.
right? My way of expressing love won't be for everyone, and that's okay. But I see now how, for me, like I delight in sharing love and joy. And I want to be with someone who has receptivity for that and wants to meet me in that place. So
Okay,
that's
that
one
is
element.
multi-layered and deep right there, because what you're talking about is occupying such a space of love that you maybe don't want to be around or with people who can't receive that, which they would definitely interpret as not love, right? Well, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to be in
Mm-hmm.
this space with me. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, what you're talking about is turning yourself over in service of love, like broadly in the universe.
Yeah, like I have minimized my expressions of love because the people I've chosen, it just didn't fit right with them. And that doesn't mean anything's wrong with them. It just wasn't their preferred way of coming together. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I would try to pretzel myself and work harder because I know that love is there. So let's try to just make it fit because it could be so good. And this doesn't mean that I only think certain ways of expressing love are okay or acceptable or for me. But I think I've just come to a point where I know more deeply what it feels like when I'm being myself and I'm
Mm,
letting energy flow out of me. And
yeah.
it feels good. It feels good to not have to put a lid on yourself
Yes.
in service of hoping that you are either enough for someone else or not too much for someone else.
Yeah. I really believe that we're here to be ourselves the most that we can be, and that the more that we are all ourselves, the better everything will be. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be tricky. I mean, everything gets trickier in relationship, right?
And like trickier, and also for me, I believe like so much better too.
So much better. I
Yeah.
agree with that sometimes. Sometimes I just want to be left alone.
I
I need
agree
a
with
lot of
that
alone
also.
time.
I
Yeah.
agree with that
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like this makes me actually think about love languages, right? The
Mm,
5 love languages, and those are pretty popular. And I think I used to be more rigid. Like once I discovered the love languages, I was like, well, can you love me in my top 2 love languages? And if you
right.
can't, then something's wrong with you.
Hmm.
And what I said earlier, it's not about that, right? I've really also had to learn to really look at how is someone trying to show me love in their own way? And am I willing to see that? Am I willing to receive that? And also let that expression be just as valid.
Yeah.
That was hard for me because I used to think, well, I want to love this way. I must be loved this way in return. And anything else equals not love.
Yeah. Yeah. If you love me, you'd love me the way I want to be loved, right?
Mhm,
Ultimatum love.
mhm. And so tying this together with that earlier thought I shared about not wanting to pretzel myself and put a lid on myself, it's like those it's a dance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a dance. This reminds me of I've got a friend who's very animated. He's a very big love muffin. And he also can flip out sometimes. He's doing his work and learning who he is as well. And as I say, relationship can be tricky, right? Sometimes our dark stuff comes out, and
Mm-hmm.
we're in a space and in a relationship where that is welcome and where boundaries and truth are also welcome. So I can recognize his love can be like a big excited dog, and I love that. And sometimes his love can be some harsh truth for him in that moment. It can fluctuate between big love muffin and a bit harsh. And what I know for myself is I love him to death, and I'm not willing to have that harshness in my life. So I think in the past, when I was also more rigid and more black and white, I would have cut him off, or I would have had to cut him off. And I think that's a theme among people who are trying to learn love and boundaries. And instead, what I've opted for is cutting off that behavior, just with an explanation of where I'm at in my life and my journey is that I can't do that thing that I've done my entire life, which is be spoken too harshly when it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to step back in those moments, and I love you. Um,
Mm.
so that opens up like a whole barrel of love that I wouldn't have been able to access before because this one corner of it felt awful, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I love that because there's so much love there. Why would you want to chuck it all away?
yeah.
Right? Especially when it like this is in particular when you're working with someone who wants to hear how things feel for you and what your needs are and honor those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right? And you guys have a dynamic where that's the case. So
yeah.
you can make your request and sounds like he's open to that or understands that.
Yeah. It's actually, so I just described it as cutting off a corner, but I think it's actually jamming more love into that corner. So I'm not actually cutting something off. I'm filling it with love for myself, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah. In that part of how you express your love to me sometimes doesn't feel good for me. And I want you to
Hmm.
know that. You said something at the very end of that boundary statement, which was, and I love you. And I think that piece is so important to include in our boundaries. A lot of us have a hard time setting boundaries and receiving boundaries without taking them personally because boundaries never felt like this easeful thing that was full of and came from a place of love in our past. And I think about myself, and if someone would have set a boundary with me in the past, I would have taken it so personally. And I would have immediately thought, they don't love me, they don't like me anymore. They think I'm bad.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I would have needed that extra. And don't forget, I love you. And it's because you're so special to me and I want to stay in connection with you that I need to say this part of it isn't working for me right now. And
Yeah.
some of us, I think, just need that extra reminder.
And there's such a softness needed to like produce that reminder, especially if you've hardened yourself in response to life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's
It's
very
something I
vulnerable.
really try with the boys, and it was something I learned from Dr. Gordon Neufeld years ago, learning from him. And it was about, when we're raising kids and needing to set boundaries, because as a parent, you have to set so many boundaries. But can you add in at the end of your boundary setting a reminder that your relationship is intact? Can you help your child remember that the love is still there, that we are good? It's just this little thing or big thing that needs to stop or needs to change. But that doesn't change the love that I have for you.
Yeah.
And I try to, do my best with my kids that they know that, hey, that behavior was totally not okay. and I still love you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I run that a lot. If somebody tells me they need to talk to me about something, or like we should address that thing, or whatever, I definitely don't naturally create space for, oh, this person loves me and wants to have a conversation. It's immediately like, I'm in trouble, something bad is coming. I feel defensive right away.
Yeah.
Um,
I have to totally catch myself with that. I notice that so often. I remember doing, work with Shay years ago when we first started. And occasionally her name would pop up on my text. And my immediate thought was, I did something wrong. I'm getting in trouble. And that was just the patterning I had growing up. Like if my parents were taking time to talk to me, it was
mm,
because something was wrong. Like it's
yeah.
never just some random, I love you, you're doing great, how was your day? And I'm excited for you. It was always like something I did wrong or I'm bad because of something. And it shocked me that at 30 something years old, that was still so imprinted in me that a
Mm-hmm.
text message alert from her could mean that so quickly. And over time, I would just have a little giggle to myself of, oh, there I am again, assuming that I'm in big trouble. And it never was the case. It was always something loving. Maybe it was a request for something. And even if it was, hey, something's got to be different here, I have evidence that she would do it with love and care. But
Mm,
my body didn't remember that every time. It now has softened, and I don't that actually thought doesn't come up when I see her name on my text messages. I don't make that assumption. But
mm,
I noticed with my ex-husband, sometimes he'll say things. He's Dutch, he's very like to the point, and I'll be like, why did that hit so hard? Like, why do I just want to be snarky right now in this moment? Even though, like, what he asked for or what he said is not a big deal at all. And I'll notice, I'm like, oh, it's that feeling of like being in trouble,
mm,
right? If someone didn't see my good intentions, someone didn't understand me. And I remember that feeling in my body from like just so many years of feeling that way.
yeah.
And I'll have to pause myself and remind myself, I'm like, but that's not what he's saying. He's just saying, could you not do this thing? Or next time, could you do it this way, please?
Yeah.
And I think in the past, I would have gotten grumpy and taken it personally and been snarky back. Now I'm just trying to let it sit, give myself some space to realize this is not the same thing.
That's amazing. Yeah. We bring so much stuff to all of our interactions, all of our readings of text messages. It's incredible. That's a really good cue when you feel like a snarky response. There's some programming running there. We do it so quickly. We write such long, elaborate stories in an instant. I was reading some statistic or fact about the number of connections in our brain, like synapses firing, stories we're writing. 10.5 kilometers of pages worth of data.
Wow.
I can't even conceive of that. Like, that's our capacity to make stuff up in the moment.
It goes fast.
So fast. Yeah.
Yeah. My
And I'm
brain is
so
good.
envious of these people. What's that?
I said my brain is good. I
Yeah,
can
good,
make you,
solid brain.
totally the enemy really, really fast.
Really fast. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Love. Evidence. That's something you said a minute ago that I wanted to pick up on.
Mm.
Such a great exercise to look for evidence that somebody loves you.
Mm.
There's
Yes.
all, the memes of find somebody who looks at you like this dog looks at the barbecue, or whatever it is. We're always looking for these sorts of signs, right? That's one that we can all seem to agree on. A doe-eyed lovey gaze means somebody loves you. There's going to be so many ways people show you their love. and it might be screwed up. I remember I had an ex who took his leaf blower to the inside of my car. Like he was cleaning my car, and he cleaned things in a way that was messy. He made a mess, and challenging, but also true to recognize that as love.
Yeah, looking for evidence. That's why, I walk us through these practices where we feel our butt on the chair and we look for something, we look at something. Because I also want us to grow that muscle of being able to intentionally look for something. Something stuck. And evidence. This was my pattern with collecting evidence in the past. The people who would love me, like that I just knew they loved me, like my mom, my dad, when I was married, my husband, I would be on high alert for all the evidence that in my mind told me, see, they don't love me. See, they're out to get me. See, they don't understand me. And then later in life in relationships, I remember being with people where there were so many glaring ways that they were not loving me well. And I'm like, see, but they said that one nice thing that one time, they still love me. I should
Boom.
stay,
Yeah.
right?
Oof. That's so confusing because we receive this love that we know is love, but that doesn't feel good to us. So then we end up in these situations where we're told this is love and it doesn't feel good to us. So we're like, yep, that's the one.
Yeah. So I've had to practice both with the people who I know like really love me. I'm really and I can be easily hard on them. I try to practice looking for the big and small ways that they're loving on me
Mm-hmm.
that I discount or minimize or don't even see.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who I tend to put on a pedestal, in the past, or, I try to see what are the other pieces that
Mm-hmm.
don't actually feel so good. And I talk about this when I work with clients about widening the lens. If, like, for example, with my mom, I have this pattern of seeing her as like she's not supporting me. But if I widen that lens, I have so much evidence that she supports me and loves me. It just might not be in the way that I tend to want to support people, but she is supporting me.
Mm-hmm.
And with when I think about ex-partners where I could only focus on that sliver of they'd said that one nice thing that time or we had that one amazing night. And if I widen my lens, I see, wow, there's actually a pattern here of me being treated in a way that's not kind and respectful. But I wasn't willing to widen that lens. So, yeah,
Yeah.
learning, practicing.
Yeah. And all of that in service to that feeling of love that we're looking for, wanting to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
So, what a gift then to celebrate. There's all this love around us that looks all kinds of ways. And then there's also those precious instances where we're experiencing love in the ways that we easily recognize and that feel great to us. There's those
Yeah.
friends and lovers we can be with where it just feels good and easy. And what
Yeah.
a gift that is.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So I hope we all spend more intention looking and noticing where love is showing up in our lives and our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I do this motion a lot, I realize.
Yeah,
This
you do.
opening up and like opening ourselves to allow love in,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Softening too. I think of it like as being permeable. So you do this motion like
Mm.
sometimes like you're opening your trench coat and exposing your heart.
Exposing. Yeah.
And I think of it as this softening like a sponge and absorbing this love.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sweet.
I love you.
I love you.
Hmm.
Another time, I want to talk about my mom buying me fruit.
Another time?
Another time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I hope everyone at home listening will take a moment to feel some love for themselves and for a loved one. And actually, that's another thing I want to say in growing love for ourselves and for each other, and in being able to become more receptive to love. There's exercises you can do. This is also a muscle like any other. It's another set of neural pathways that we're retraining in service of love and compassion. And simple metta meditations, METTA. These are golden loving heart meditations. So um, everyone can summon that feeling of big love in your heart. It feels like a big golden light. And absorbing that into yourself, projecting it out for other people, is just a very practical exercise in growing experiences of love for yourself and inserting more love out into the ethers. And that's never a bad thing.
Yeah. I want to challenge us all when you notice a moment of delight, to stay there for one more breath. And if you notice wanting to say something kind and loving to someone and you find yourself stopping yourself, see if you can push past that and say it anyways.
Yeah, beautiful. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up with a body practice?
I think that's good for now.
That's good. Okay. Is there a body practice you have in mind?
Yeah, actually. Okay. Hands. We need our hands. We're going to feel your feet on the ground or your butt on the chair. And we're going to make this motion like where you sort of let your fingers dance. They can dance however you want them to. But it's like you're sprinkling confetti around in your space. And like you can do it, make sure you get it to the side and up high and down low. And sometimes people like to think of it as like colorful confetti, like if you won the lottery, if you get chosen, like what do they push that golden buzzer on America's Got Talent? If you're sprinkling like um, sparkles around you and glitter around you. But like when I do this, I can't not smile.
Oh, I'm
Right?
smiling.
Yes, you're smiling. All right. You just think of like sprinkling goodness around you and
Oh,
letting it shower down and rain down on you.
oh,
It's
it's
hard to
like
do that
power
and be
poses, except
snarky.
love poses.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi.
You're welcome.
Celebratory movements. I
Those are
love that.
important.
Yeah,
We can talk a lot about, let's do that sometime. Body
yeah, that's
movements and
cool
how we get rigid in our movements.
for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
state change. Like, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
notice I was smiling till you told me, but definitely there are movements I could be making that I will always be smiling if I'm doing them or laughing.
Yes.
Brilliant.
All right.
Okay. Great. Well, then that's it for today. And please like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody you care about. We'll see you next time.